All right, thanks for staying with us. Time now to get into our big interview this evening, and you can send in your questions or your comments using the SMS line 22422. The hashtag is NEWSNIGHT. Now, a week is our long term limits or changing them, and some controversy about how universities will be funded moving forward. We want to try and make sense of all of this on the program tonight with my two guests. From the far right there, we have Wilson Sossion, an education expert, former NAT Secretary General and a former legislator as well. Honorable Sossion, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Wahiga.
Karibu sana. We also are joined by Okia Omtata, the Senator for Busia County. Welcome to the program as well, Senator.
Thank you.
Karibu sana. And we just want to drive straight into it. And obviously, one of the big stories that we had today, and I want to start with you, Senator Omtata. There's a proposal that's been the big talk this day of constitutional changes to remove the presidential term limit. It stirred quite a storm, and I want to get your view on that as we begin the program this evening.
I think, first of all, I think it's a conscious attempt to distract the country from the goings-on. It's a red herring of sorts, and I think the honorable member who made it has succeeded in diverting attention from many, many issues that are burdening the Kenyan people. Personally, I don't know what to say about it, but I say if there's
distraction to what end?
There are many things that have been happening. There's been an attempt to talk about SGR. There's a lot of things in the air that are disturbing Kenyans, including cost of living and what have you. So you'll keep on throwing up these things to distract Kenyans. But some of us are ready to fight it.
Okay.
I don't know whether we shall succeed, but it'll be a fight.
Okay, of course.
And it will be a vicious fight because the integrity of our politics and the hygiene of our politics is in changing politicians the way we change the diapers on a baby, as they say. So we need to keep on changing politicians so that we keep on trying to achieve the cream coming to the top. So if we create a situation whereby the topmost office is available to be occupied for more than 10 years, it will be bad. In fact, some of us think that maybe we should reduce the term limit to 4 years or 3 years.
A simple, one of 3-year term?
No, 2 terms, but
or 3, okay.
Two terms, but a shorter period than 10 years. So that if the mistakes somebody is making mistakes, we can get rid of him much earlier or her. And then if somebody is doing well, then we can get somebody else to do better. But the idea that we can extend the life of the chief executive or the tenure of the chief executive, for me, is something that I don't even know where it comes from. Because this country, even before the new constitution, we had already embraced the term limit. And you remember after the removal of Section 2A of the former constitution, President Moi ran under the new dispensation with the knowledge that you could not have more than 2 years. And he went. So if Moi, who had all the power that you could want to have and who had all the machinery he needed to push or sustain himself in power, could concede to that kind of position, then it tells you that the country really moved to that kind of place consciously and in a very strong motion that nobody could ignore it. So I don't think that any mortal who has been born today has the capacity to move the country away from the 2-term limit. Okay,
and I hear you on that. And we've heard from both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza legislators united in that none of them, or both of them say they would not support a motion like that. Wilson Sossion, I don't know if you have a contrary view this evening.
Yeah, I think we are trying to create a storm, which rather is a storm in a teacup. That it's like the runaway narrative of what Machogu talked about, the CS education.
I was going to ask if you also think his comment is a storm in a teacup.
Because what Machogu talked about was universities generating additional income, which is a normal practice, but it was twisted and emotionalized. This one of constitutional amendment to extend the term of the president cannot happen in this country. And it's inconceivable that somebody can dream, can imagine and canvass the extension of presidential tenure beyond 10 years. That will not happen in this country. And as Omtata has put it, and I congratulate him, a very strong civil social justice fighter, there is no way it will not happen in this country. And the term limit of presidents in this country will never, ever exceed 10 years for whatever reason. Maybe it can be reduced to 4-4. It can be reduced to 4-4 so that we conform with the mathematical number of the United States of America. And as you can see, in Kenya, if you look at the philosophy of Kenya Kwanza, was that we should never, as Kenyans, move closer to amending the Constitution, which we have not even implemented in totality. We must fully implement the Constitution. And that is why you saw the president on day one appointing the judges and actualizing the judiciary funds and allowing the Police Service Commission to have an accounting officer. And that is one way of implementing the Constitution. So I don't think in Kenya Kwanza and Kenya Kwanza government, anybody is thinking of amending the Constitution, particularly to introduce such strange and unpalatable proposals. So that's your final word on that. That's the truth of the matter. So we should not engage in a discussion that is neither here or there.
So while I'm still on you, let me get
I can tell you in 2032, William Ruto will retire in this country. And we hope, and we are very sure, the transition of 2032 internally within the party will not be done the way it has been done in the past. William Ruto should prepare and transit very peacefully without interfering with the transition. Kenyans will decide on the next president in 2032. That's the truth of the matter. So this is a matter, well, it's good for Kenyans to discuss, but I don't think we should waste a lot of energy on this. The party position of Kenya Kwanza, as it was before election, during election, and after election, is that we must continue implementing our Constitution.
Okay.
Let us make our Constitution work.
Okay, fair point.
A small correction. William Ruto was elected for 5 years, not 10 years. So when it comes to
he enjoys the constitutional opportunity of doing 10 years, and he's going to do 10 years.
Let him finish. Go ahead.
He has the opportunity to be re-elected if he performs well. If he doesn't perform well, we shall vote him out. So he cannot say that he will be around in 2032, unless he has got other mechanisms of staying in power other than the vote of Kenyans.
So you say, fine, I mean, let the Kenyans decide which they
after 5 years
at the ballot.
Yeah, the ballot.
Let me, however, mention something else. It's been about 2 weeks now for the Kenya Kwanza cabinet secretaries to move around and get settled ever since they were named and sworn and vetted and sworn in. And some of the proclamations that they've made, has really stirred up the dust. And two in particular that touch on things that both of you are very passionate about. For you, obviously, Sosion on matters of education. I'll come to you on that. But there's a tweet that Kipchumba Murkomen tweeted on Sunday, I believe, stating, here are the SGR documents, Kenyans. As promised, I forwarded a copy to the leader of majority in the Senate and the National Assembly. We are keeping our promise. And okay, I remember very clearly, you moved to court, I think even back as early as 2015, to ask questions about how the procurement process was carried out? 2012, even earlier. Go ahead.
Yes, I moved to court in 2012 to challenge the SGR. But before I comment about that, I would like to say that I've seen positive signs coming up. I've seen, and I would like to congratulate the Honorable Ababu Namwamba, who happens to be from Busia and a friend of mine. He has tried to unlock the stalemate in sports. So that's a positive, and I think there have been many other positive things. So I'm one fellow who likes looking at the positive, not the bad. And I like to congratulate them. And I also believe that Kenya Kwanza, irrespective of how they go to the power they have, should be given the chance to govern. and we should support them to govern. But now coming back to the issue of the SGR, I think there are court orders that were made in Mombasa in a case filed by a common friend called Halif Khalifa and others, whereby the government was ordered to release the contracts. Not that we don't know the contracts. Personally, I have all the contracts.
You have?
Yes, but the courts have refused to accept them. They say I got them illegally, whatever that means according to the judges. But in a situation whereby everybody has refused to release a contract and billions of shillings are being taken out of this country, you don't know what constitution the courts defend when they say...
Which contracts do you have? How many are they?
There are 3.
So you have all 3 of them?
I have all the 3.
The loan agreement?
The loan agreement, the financial contract, and the technical contract.
Where did you get them from, if you don't mind me asking, Senator?
I got them from the public.
Can you be a bit more specific?
These things were, there's a time in which these things were tabled in Parliament. You remember when there was the Ababu Namwamba committee, the PIC, and the commander committee, I think the PAC, and they demanded that these things be brought to Parliament. And they were brought. And it was in a public forum. And I got my copies.
I'm curious if we can get them even tomorrow.
Yeah, if you come to my office, I'll give you. In fact, the last time Lintu removed a motion in Parliament, they came to me for copies. But that motion was killed on the floor. And even from the contracts, what we have is not a standard, it's not a standard gauge railway. It's called a Chinese standard. So you cannot get spares for that railway from Brazil, for example. You have to go to China for whatever you want to get.
So for you, the declaration by the Transport CS, and we had actually invited him to the show today to talk about a wide range of issues, but he was not available.
It's a good beginning. At least something has been released.
Okay, so you're looking at it glass half full.
Yeah, and that's why I'm always positive. But there's nothing new under the sun. And I doubt if there will be any change in terms of the SGR other than the platitudes of the campaign flow. Because the current president was up to his neck in the SGR mess. And you remember my friend Keter being run out of town when he tried to stand up as an MP and say, what is going on? So let us know who is fooling who is something we should not allow.
That's where you stand on
yes,
this.
But anybody that I've got all the all the contracts, I have them. I've produced copies before Parliament, and the same Parliament which had ordered them to be released, and I made my copies as they say, you make your hay when the sun is shining, and I saw the opportunity and got copies. But the courts have refused to admit them. They say that I got them illegally. So how you can get something illegally when it is tabled in public is what you don't know.
But you say tomorrow, if we come to your office, you give us a copy.
Yes, you'll come as long as you pay the photocopying charges, and I charge 3 shillings per copy.
So, Sion.
There are above 1,000. There are more than 1,500 pieces of...
1,500 documents?
Yes.
Or papers?
Papers, yeah.
So, Sion's scribbling on his notebook as you speak. I don't know what he
and I hope Tata is not running another government office where you have to pay services for services.
I run a cyber cafe. If you come, you'll have to pay for the photocopy.
Number one.
Go ahead, Sion.
The Constitution of Kenya is very clear, the right to information. The right to information is sacrosanct in our Constitution, and all these secrets around the contract must be declared to the public. But even before I talk about that, we've talked about the new cabinet of Kenya Kwanza. And I would like Kenyans to appreciate that we have an open president who has been able to conduct a seamless transition from the old cabinet of Uhuru Kenyatta, and he has been able to conduct 2 cabinet meetings and business of government with the old cabinet. And you remember, there has been no cabinet meeting since 2019, and William Ruto has been very open, and we saw a joint cabinet meeting of the old and new cabinet. That's orderly transition, and we have seen peaceful transition, and we've seen exiting cabinet secretaries and incoming communicating very well. That is the civility we need, and that is the sanitization of the politics we need. We don't need animosity. We need some high sense of civility. And what Kipchumba Murkomen has done to declare whatever documents, whether it's only the loan agreement and the other document that is missing, fiscal contract and technical information, we call it technical contract, this is a good beginning. Kenyans ought to know the truth because it is Kenyans who are paying. And whatever contracts that are entered on and on behalf of the people of Kenya by any government officer must be known by the public. It must pass through Parliament. This is what we are talking about, what we call the state capture. We saw the other day the auctioning of the ports of Mombasa to some strangers in the Middle East. This is what has been going on in this country. And this is a matter, the matter of disclosure of the SGR must be disclosed fully to the public.
Why do you think it wasn't fully disclosed on Sunday? Why do you think that CS release maybe one?
I've not said the CS did not disclose fully, but at least there's been some reasonable level of disclosure. I'm hearing from my brother here that there is this other document and this other document. This is a healthy conversation. We need full disclosure about the SGR so that we know the dirty things. Everything that has been undertaken under the SGR and even all other projects in this country. And we've seen the CS, the new CS, has said, of course, the SGR has to be extended all the way up to Kisumu and the rest, which I think is part of the Trans-African infrastructure network. But then, before that is done, we must know the exact truth about the contents of the current SGR up to where it is and why it has cobbled up billions. We have seen neighboring countries. You look at Ethiopia with their own SGR and electric train system that has caused less. You are seeing what Tanzania is doing is less. So really, we don't need to mess up our resources with the corrupt nature and our culture, particularly those in government. And you end up committing resources that could have done so much. Probably what has gone into the current SGR could have done the entire job of SGR all through up to Kisumu and Malaba. So I think this is a step in the right direction. And I urge any other CS, let us disclose whatever is going on in government. Let us run an open government that Kenyans can understand, that which Kenyans can question. And I think the development in the transport sector by Kipchumba Murkomen is a good step. And we should move further and audit and question. Those who have questions like Omtata, keep asking. If you have documents, don't tell us to buy. Bring them. Display them to the public. Let us share, because this information is critical to the public. Okay. The problem that we have had is running government in mysteries and in secrecy, to the point that even there are no cabinet meetings. I mean, that is absurdity of the highest order. And what we want now, and that Kenya, the president has said, the opposition check the government as government runs government openly. So I think in terms of the new cabinet, is doing a fantastic job. CS infrastructure has done it well by declaring what is in the SGR. And when you come to education, of course, you've said, oh, there have been funny statements that are out of tune. When Rigathi Gachagua spoke so passionately on the day of inauguration, some said, no, some of these things we should have kept it away from the guest. In America, because I've traveled globally, they say, speak truth to power. Let us speak truth everywhere, however painful it may be. And so I think Kenya Kwanza, the philosophy of Kenya Kwanza.
Do you think, now that you've brought us there, do you think the education CS in the statement he made was speaking truth about the state of our universities?
Yes, indeed. The truth of the matter.
Universities
the truth of the matter
cannot continue to strain the exchequer as they currently are.
No. That is a misconception. And I listened to the entire statement verbatim.
I have the transcript.
And I did ask him. You know, what the CS was saying is that the university should open avenues of additional resources. If you go to the global north, the Ivy League universities, the Oxford, the Harvard and the rest, and you look at the amount of resources that they're getting in terms of research. They get so much funds in terms of research that part of those resources are offloaded to universities in the third world. And that's how university should be done. And that is what Machogu was referring to. There is no way that any sane minister in this country can talk of stopping or defunding universities. Because if you look at the whole arrangement of Education Charter of Kenya Kwanza, it's about putting in more resources to the education sector. One, that research funding should be elevated from the current 0.8% to at least 2% of the GDP. Funding of students through Higher Education Loan Board should be doubled from 13% to 26%, and lumped together with the University Fund Board of 43%. That leaps from the current 56% to 69%, and that the rest of the balance should have to be mobilized through other avenues.
Supporting the education sector more, I think, and not less. I want to ask you to pause there. I know this is your
people did not understand the message of Machogu, and this one I can vouch.
Okay, I don't know if you heard that statement in any way, and I don't know if you want to comment on that, even as you give us your general outlook of what you think the biggest test for this cabinet is so far. We've moved from transport to education. We're just trying to get a big picture of how the cabinet is performing so far. Go ahead, Okia.
Well, on matters of education, I think Mr. Mochage is ill-equipped to speak about education. And then number two, I think that we need to distinguish between public universities and private universities. Most of the Ivy League universities in the US are private universities, and whatever they fundraise, but the public university in a third world here, we must be working very hard to produce engineers, to produce doctors, to produce all these skills that you require to run a modern economy without taxing the parent, without saying that education go wherever. Education is more important than a highway. Than building a highway, it's more important than building a railway to educate people, because if you educate them, they can come and build a railway themselves. But if you build a railway and you don't have people who can even drive, who are educated, who know how to drive a train, that railway will collapse. So for me, education is so sacred that anybody thinking, whether he's speaking in double speak, whether he's speaking in poetry or in broken prose or in whatever language that cannot be understood, to try and create the impression that universities or tertiary education will be left to stand on its own. No country can do that and survive, and especially for a third world. And we just need to look at India. Look at how India is conquering the world, because it has a very well-educated population, especially in finances and in the sciences. It's doing very well. So for me, I think if there's anything that we must do is invest in education, and invest in that kind of education that you can then tap in to develop our country. When you look at what's going on around us, whereby even to build a road, now we have to rely on China. You see, it's really sad. Even if you don't talk about this year and whatever. So this consumerism that the Chinese will do it for us, the Chinese will do it for us, let us live our own, is what is informing this kind of a debate. We must get the Chinese out, and we must get the capacity to begin doing our own things. And the other day, I was in Texas, and I visited the headquarters of Dell Computers, and I made some big shots there. And they were telling, among the discussion, they said, look here, you people in Kenya can do very well in terms of outsourcing some of the work that we outsource elsewhere. Because you speak better English than the Indians. You have got a lot of things going for you, but you just don't have the infrastructure. So our education is being valued and all those kind of things. So I would say that we should invest a lot more in education. We should invest a lot more in the skills that we require, and then also invest a lot more in certification of knowledge, not just depending on classroom education. We should get the kind the government has been saying, we create mechanisms for certifying various skills and grading them. And even Juakali here, we must now move towards a cottage industry where we have got weights and measures and standardization and stuff like that, so that we can move towards an industrial country. We cannot have an industrial country with an uneducated population. Simple as that. So if we want to be industrialized, we must prioritize education and the kind of talk. I'm happy my brother Sosioni said that Mr. the minister, is challenged in communication. He can't communicate.
Did he say that?
Yeah,
I don't think he said that.
He said that he didn't mean what he said.
Don't infer.
He didn't mean what he said, which means he can't communicate. You are supposed to mean what you say. You see, you're supposed to mean what you say. So if you need interpreters to come and make us understand you, then there's a challenge there. But for me, education, please prioritize it. Let the people be educated. Let us have as many educated and unemployed people as possible. Employment is secondary to education. Let us get people educated, and we'll be able to be prepared for takeoff. Let
me take a comment from Sosion before I read some feedback. 56 days of the Kenya Kwanza administration, the state of the nation tonight. Sosion, go ahead.
I can't agree more with what Okiya Omtata is talking about. Education is a key transformer. That is what the Asian Tigers did. Korea reconfigured the education. And that is why you have the technological and industrial takeoff. Malaysia, the same. And I can quote University of Technology of Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur. The laptops that are sold in the market are manufactured actually right at the university. And I can say Kenya Kwanza has prioritized education very strongly. We have an education charter that was negotiated. It is part of the plan of Kenya Kwanza. And as we are seated here, there is a robust public conversation out there about the review of the entire education reforms by the public, commissioned by the president. And this is a presidential working party. And is looking at all the areas in totality in education, not just CBC, with a subcommittee that is dealing with the university education, subcommittee dealing with basic, and a subcommittee dealing with the TVET. And so we will be expecting recommendations, but even as we await for recommendations, we must think of an education system, because we are talking about bottom-up economic model that is promoting manufacturing and industrialization. It cannot be done without the support of education. And I hasten to say that the education system in the entire continent of Africa, the post-colonial education, it was designed in such a way that even our own engineers do not think of manufacturing. They stop thinking about manufacturing. They abandon manufacturing. They forget manufacturing. They fear manufacturing. And they even hate manufacturing. That is why for our roads, we have to bring engineers from China. And we must remodel through this review of education. We must remodel and have our own education system within the country that will incubate our own engineers to participate in own factories and participate in industrialization. Let me ask you, Waiga Mwaura, the Kuguru Foods and Softas that were in this country, what happened? It was destroyed. The only brewery that is being run by an African here and owned by an African, the Keroche. Look at the frustration that is receiving from the taxman. And our post-colonial education system in Africa was designed so that it does not support industrialization, so that the factories that we have are owned by foreigners. But now, with this model that we have as Kenya Kwanza, we must be able to have our own model of education system that will ensure that our own graduates, our own engineers, and even our own universities. If we are talking about Rivertex in Eldoret, it's linked to more university and students in that particular department. If you are talking about students in pharmacy at the University of Nairobi, they must be able to lead in research and be able, even things like whatever we had, the COVID-19 vaccine. Kenya could be one of the countries that should be manufacturing vaccines. And if you look at the revolutionary agenda of Kenya Kwanza, it will not be achieved without tweaking on education and investing in education. That is why the Kenya Kwanza government is very clear that one, research shall be funded at least 2% of the GDP. University education shall be funded. There will be what we call a national skill board that is going to determine the courses that are relevant and be funded.
Okay.
And so if you look at the whole model, up to even and including basic education, it is modeled to transform and to deliver quality teaching and quality education with good outcomes that are linked to the industry.
Okay,
and that is what we are doing. We are doing it the Asian way.
Sosion, thank you so much for that. Okia, I have a text here. I don't think I have the permission to read their name, from a former legislator who says, kindly send me Senator Mtata's number. I'd like to have a copy of the full SGR contracts by tomorrow morning. I'm ready to pay for photocopying.
Yeah, it's okay because it's available. The reason I charge for photocopying is that I don't find it safe to give out the document for anybody to go and photocopy. And I should say that one person in President Ruto's government has the entire copy of the contract.
Of the 3 contracts?
Yes. One man called Honorable Inturi. He came to my office and I gave him all the contracts when he was moving the motion in Parliament. And so he has a copy.
These are the contracts that you're saying the court declared that you got illegally?
Well, the court claims I got them illegal, but I didn't change a comma in the contracts. Yeah. The court declared a lot of things that are funny. And I thought that those particular contracts, having been taken from Parliament, cannot be legally acquired. Parliament is an open forum. Yeah.
What do you feel should be the immediate priorities of this new cabinet? What do you think is their big test at the moment?
I think, first of all, I have to appreciate that we are in a big mess, which was caused by William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta.
Is it fair to heap the blame on 2 with 3?
The people who ran Jubilee, even this thing of the SGR, they're the ones who signed. It is their regime which signed. I wouldn't even call it a government. It's their regime which signed. And it committed Kenya to a lot of this mess. The cost of living has shot through the roof. These are the guys who have never accounted for the Eurobond. You are talking about releasing the SGR. Why don't they release the Eurobond? Who ate the Eurobond? These are the things we need to discuss. So when you come to where we are now, the cost of living is impossible for Kenyans. And that's one thing that the government must fix. It's a tall order, much as William Ruto was part and parcel of making of the mess. Because the idea of going for commercial loans was an idea that was brought in by Uhuru and Ruto, and one of the main apostles or evangelists or whoever you can call it, who justified the going for commercial loans from wherever was William Ruto. And these loans have come back and are eating us. So we need to really get together and dig ourselves out of this hole before we think of the way forward. So the cost of living needs to be arrested, like yesterday. And to me, that's the priority that the government should address. The cost of fuel has become impossible. And as a result of the cost of fuel becoming impossible because of the huge taxes that have been imposed on the fuel, we find ourselves in a situation whereby there's a lot of problems. And the thing is that the IMF is imposing a lot of conditions on the government. At that point, I would like us to invoke Article 1. Can the government enter a contract with the IMF to virtually punish Kenyans without without consulting the people? So can those proposals of the IMF be brought
to Kenyans first?
To Kenyans first, so that we look at them and see what is it they're trying to do to us. You remember the structural adjustment programs came?
SAPs.
How they messed the country up for apparently no reason. We were just made into guinea pigs. So personally, I would say that one of the other things that the government needs to do is to tell the IMF, okay, these are the conditionalities you want to give us. Let us take it to the Kenyans, who are the sovereign people, William Ruto is not a sovereign. He's a subject. He's an employee of the people of Kenya. So the sovereign people of Kenya need to make the decision whether they are going to be defanged or to be killed so that they can pay some of these things. The other thing we need to do is to go back and audit our debt. You are talking about the SGR today. In the 70s, we had something called the Kenyan fertilizer, a big scam where money was stolen. You have got big scams like Kenya Airways, where money is used to, whereby public money is stolen to sustain some idea of an airline. You see, and then you see, no, it's an idea of an airline. It's not an airline. When Kenya Airways was being privatized, we wrote off loan debts. Okay? We paid off. Since it was privatized, we have kept on bailing this thing out now and then and now and then. But nobody is punished. These people who mismanage these resources, nobody is punished. So it becomes a conduit for stealing.
We have an accountability problem.
You have an accountability problem.
What you're saying in a nutshell.
And then another problem is there's a point at which part of the government got obsessed with Muzungus. So they thought that by dropping Muzungus who are ignoramuses, who can't get jobs in their own countries into Kenya. No, I'm talking bitterly because this thing is hurting people. People are dying in this country for not being able to afford an aspirin. Or they call it what? Maramoja. People can't afford these basic things. The other time I went to visit a family which had a funeral in Madare. Just the other day. And you know what? They were eating ugali with a sauce made of salt mixed with water. Okay? This is how bad this country is, and we're not going to laugh about it. You know, some of us sit in these air-conditioned rooms, and we think this is Kenya. This is not even 0.1% of Kenya. Parliament is not even 0.1% of Kenya. Kenyans are dying every day. Animals are dying in Turkana. People are starving and dying, and we are doing nothing about it. So one thing the president needs to do is to get down and deal with that problem.
Okay.
The platitudes of the campaign flow, the kind of things that my brother is saying here, we have had these things before. And coming from the same people, I don't think they're going to be implemented. We had a lot of poetry about stadiums. We had a lot of poetry about laptops. We had a lot of poetry about everything. Can we stop poetry and speak broken prose?
Okay.
And say 1 + 1 equals to 2 and not 3.
Okay. Let him come in. And even as you come in, I've actually gotten a message here that we've actually received 52.7 billion shillings from IMF as the fourth part of a 38-month loan program. Very interesting with what OK is speaking to right now. Go ahead, Sosion.
The fact of the matter is our economy is in intensive care unit. And we've seen this happen tragically over the last 10 years. Look at the loan portfolio, 10 trillion. What has it done? We cannot account for it. We are hurrying into subsidies. Subsidies that does not make sense. Subsidies to bring down the cost of unga. How many Kenyans bought unga at less than 100 shillings? None. Subsidies to stabilize fuel prices. That never changed anything. Now, and if you look at the overall model of the economy for the last couple of years, is that we've killed the production sector completely. We've killed agriculture completely. And Kenya is an agricultural country whose population and mainstay is agriculture. And when we kill it, then we should prepare for a long funeral. And subsidies is not going to save this country. The diagnosis of Kenya Kwanza is that now we must balance between capital investment, borrowing, and injecting resources into the production sector of the economy. And that is being done. And that is why the president did not allow any further injection of subsidies to areas of study, but focus on production, bringing down the cost of fertilizers and subsidizing the cost of fertilizers. Because if we inject resources to the production sector of the economy, particularly to the agriculture, we will be food sufficient. And in the long run, we have to promote manufacturing and value addition, because we must provide solutions rather than critique. We diagnosed and we provided a framework of the programs to be done, and in terms of resources, what it requires, and the workable economic model. And it's going to work, whether people like it or not. So a number of areas that have been focused on, like putting money in housing and injecting and ensuring that this program takes off, is part of reinvigorating the production sector, revamping NSSF so that we can grow domestic resources and we avoid over-reliance in external borrowing. We must be self-sustaining. And let us remember a time during Kibaki administration when the national budget could not be funded externally. It was funded almost at 95% locally. We must fix this economy. And the president, other than investing more in agriculture and focusing on irrigation-fed agriculture, and there's a great focus of building dams, about 100 of them in the immediate run, and must be done. It's not just mere pronouncement, it's part of reversing the rot that has faced this country. And when you look at other areas, revenue collection, we must make sense in terms of how we collect revenue and how we spend revenue of the people. When Kibaki took over this economy, the revenue collection was at 250 billion. And I remember that time I was a leader of NAT, and we were paying for salaries, and we banished Kanu out of power. And Kibaki told us within 100 days, he will pay all the salaries. And within 100 days, he told us, and there is no money, we've got to fix the economy, and we've got to collect taxes fast. That was done. Free education was rolled out, salaries were paid, the economy grew, our own local banks had excess money for borrowing, there was business, the economy was healthy, we were at 7.5%. And at the tail end of Kibaki, if it were not for the skirmishes of 0708, our economy was doing well. But we ruined it with politics, the same politics that we keep playing. And if you look at it in every election, the economy dives. And that is why we need to develop a trajectory that in any election, the economy is not affected. It must be resilient. It must grow. When Kibaki exited, the revenue collection was over 1 trillion per year. And services could be rendered. Budgets could be financed. Programs could be done. Now, at the exit of Uhuru Kenyatta, revenue collection is at 2.1 trillion. But the economy is potential to raise over 3 trillion shillings. And that is why the president has said tax collection and tax payment is not a choice. And those who have been evading taxes are not going to evade taxes anymore. And tax evasion and corruption in this country, according to data of AU and the UN, puts it at close to 1 trillion shillings that are lost. And if this is fixed, our economy, through proper revenue collection, without loading even any further taxation on the ordinary poor, it is the poor, the people at the bottom of the pyramid, who are bearing the burden of paying taxes. But those who are undertaking mega businesses and have put the economy under capture are evading taxes. Everyone must pay taxes. That's the word of the president. And once everybody pays taxes, we'll have revenue and resources to deliver services, to direct adequate resources to the production sector of the economy, to direct some resources to the capital sector of the economy, and to direct other resources to the social sector, the healthcare and education. There is no choice. All this is about leadership. We have the leadership that is bold enough to take on the bull and face these challenges and change. Kenya is a resilient economy.
That's a good place to leave it.
It's a resilient economy.
Yes.
And we only need a serious leadership. Now we have a serious leadership. And I can tell you, this will be delivered. These are not mere statements.
Thank you,
but it will be delivered. We have the plan.
Thank you.
And we shall deliver.
Thank you, Honorable Sosion. We're due for a short break. We take a short break. We come back. I'm seeing a lot of your messages, a lot of reactions to what some of our guests have said tonight. A very honest conversation. The state of the nation on this 8th day of November 2022. And a lot of truths coming out even as we continue with this discussion. Let's take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to read some of your feedback, get one or two more comments from my guests, and then we wrap it up. You're watching Newsnight. Stay with us. #Newsnight, SMS line 22422. We'll be right back.